The docking alarm rumbled through Horizon Station just as Orion Vale had managed to wedge half his torso inside a stubborn maintenance conduit. The thing had been installed decades before he was even born and had clearly decided to die today out of pure spite. Horizon Station had once been built for diplomacy between stars, now it was held together by rust, half-forgotten schematics, and Orion's creative interpretations of engineering standards. The station's PA buzzed overhead, sounding more exhausted than authoritative. Attention personnel, the Archelian diplomatic vessel has entered final docking sequence. Estimated arrival, 13 minutes. Non-essential staff, clear primary corridors. Lucky me, Orion muttered. He yanked on a stubborn coupling that screeched like it was offended at being touched. They always arrive when something breaks. Lyra Juno, one of the younger techs, poked her head around the junction, her jumpsuit smeared with a glowing teal substance Orion chose not to question. Did you hear? Real Archelians. The delegation's huge. Their crown envoy is coming. And their heir. Thrilling, he said from inside the conduit. The coupling finally gave way with a grunt. I'll be sure to wave at them while trying to keep life support from sounding like an asthmatic walrus. You're impossible, Lyra groaned, stepping away to rejoin the preparation chaos. Good. Orion preferred solitude. Machines were far simpler than people, they made sense, they broke honestly, and if they failed, you could fix them with tools instead of guesswork. People were messy, contradictory, and left holes when they disappeared. Machines just waited. He slung his toolkit over his shoulder and crawled deeper into the maintenance corridors, the dimly glowing bioluminescent strips along the walls flickering as if resentful of their existence. The further he went, the more the station hummed, a complex metallic heartbeat shifting into a purposeful rhythm as the Archelian craft locked onto the docking ring. Somewhere above, officials would be arranging themselves into stiff rows of importance, rehearsing speeches, adjusting uniforms. Diplomacy required posturing. Orion's job required getting covered in dust that predated most treaties. He reached a malfunctioning airflow junction, popped the panel, and ran diagnostics. Immediately, the readings disliked him. Pressure differential anomalies. Phantom blockages. Fluctuations that made absolutely no physical sense. Don't start with me, he warned the system. His handheld scanner chirped sullenly, he called it Bram, because it beeped like it was perpetually disappointed. Just as he was tracing a backwards installed coupling, something so impossibly incorrect it almost felt commendable, the entire corridor vibrated. Docking clamps. The Archelians had arrived. Great, Orion said to the vent. History in the making. Meanwhile, you're over here failing at basic airflow like it's a philosophical crisis. Then he heard it. Light footsteps. Too light to be a technician. And breathing, quick, uneven, panicked. Orion froze. The maintenance network was a maze that only engineers voluntarily navigated. No civilian, dignitary, or visiting diplomat would wander down here, especially not during arrival protocols. The footsteps grew closer. Then a figure stumbled around a corner into the faint bacterial glow. A child. A small one, no more than 7 by human standards, dressed in shimmering, liquid-like fabric that rippled like silver water. Their eyes were huge, dark, impossibly deep. And their ears, long, slightly curved upward, confirmed what Orion's brain refused to process. An Archelian child. Oh no, Orion breathed. No, no, no. You're supposed to be upstairs. In the fancy room. With the important people. The child's gaze locked onto him, terrified, fragile, threaded with a panic he recognized too well. The kind that came from a world suddenly too loud, too bright, too confusing. They didn't move. Neither did Orion. He slowly set Bram onto the floor, hands raised slightly. Hey. It's okay. I'm just fixing, whatever this is trying to be. Very boring job. Spectacularly safe unless you're allergic to frustration. No reaction. Not even a blink. The kid looked like they were carved from fear. Orion took a small breath, using the gentler voice he once used with his little brother during storms. You're not supposed to be down here, right? Big ceremony happening. A lot of people fussing. Too much noise. Still silence. But the trembling in their fingers eased by a fraction. Encouraged, Orion shifted to sit, leaning casually against the bulkhead so he appeared smaller, less threatening. I'm Orion, he said. I fix things other people forget exist. That's Bram. He gestured to the diagnostic tool, which beeped irritably. He complains for a living. Great personality once you get used to it. Something flickered in the child's eyes. Not trust, not even close, but a spark of attention. Someone is probably looking for you right now, Orion added. Probably a lot of someones. Very official ones with very dramatic titles. The child's posture stiffened, as if those someones were precisely what they were fleeing. Orion sighed. Thought so. He pretended to focus on the broken coupling while talking softly. Machines were good background characters for stressful situations. Worst part of this job. Everything I fix breaks again in 3 months. Whole station is held together through stubbornness and denial. It's like a living metaphor for my coping skills. A tiny shift, the child moved half a step closer. Orion didn't acknowledge it. He simply kept talking, gentle, steady, predictable. You know your people built quantum rift navigators. Those things basically trick space-time into behaving. That's incredible. Me. I'm undoing some genius's upside-down couplings from 40 years ago. Another step. Now they were close enough that he could see the faint iridescent shimmer beneath their skin, like starlight trapped beneath the surface. A whisper brushed the air. A sound shaped like a word. But too faint to decipher. It's okay, Orion said immediately. You don't have to talk. Plenty of people don't. Bram never shuts up, but he only beeps. Communication is flexible. Then his comm unit chirped, sharp, insistent. He ignored it. The child's shoulders uncoiled just a little. Orion took that as a victory. My little brother used to hide when the world felt too big, he said quietly. Behind cooling units, under stairwells, once inside a recycling capsule, that was a dramatic afternoon. Sometimes hiding feels safer than choosing. The child's eyes softened. Then, carefully, almost desperately, they reached out a small, trembling hand. Orion stared at it, startled, unsure, then extended his own. Their fingers wrapped around his with surprising strength. Warm. Trusting. Afraid. Okay, he whispered. We'll figure this out. The comm unit exploded with alerts. A dozen frantic messages. Search parties. Priority alarms. Orion sighed. And, there it is. Things officially became complicated. Before he could stand, a group of security officers rounded the corner, flanked by Archelian attendants shimmering in gold and silver fabrics. They looked frantic, exhausted, and on the verge of losing whatever diplomatic composure they had left. And at the sight of the child clinging to a grease-stained technician, their panic sharpened to something brittle. Orion's grip tightened protectively. Oh stars, he muttered. Yeah. This is going to be a whole thing, isn't it? The arrival of the Archelian attendants filled the narrow maintenance corridor with a sudden, shimmering tension. They moved like flowing metal, robes of amber, silver, and pale gold shifting as if the fabric itself breathed. Behind them, Horizon Station security filed in with hard boots and sharper expressions, but even they seemed hesitant, unsure where authority ended and diplomacy began. The moment their eyes found the child pressed against Orion's leg, everything stopped. There, an Archelian attendant gasped. Their ears angled back, a gesture Orion had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of both relief and panic. Heir Solon, please, your mother waits, the council waits, the ceremony. The child, Solon, flinched so sharply that Orion felt the tremor through the tiny hand in his. And without thinking, without planning, he stepped subtly in front of them. The corridor collectively inhaled. A human technician shielding an alien heir was not an everyday occurrence. Not even on Horizon Station, where bizarre malfunctions happened every 30 minutes. Commander Lyria Vale, head of station security, pinched the bridge of her nose. Vale, she muttered, what in every starless void do you think you're doing? Being held hostage? Orion offered weakly, lifting their joined hands. Look, I'm not grabbing them. They're grabbing me. Physics doesn't lie. One of the Archelian attendants made a soft, anguished sound. Another stepped forward only to stop when Solon withdrew behind Orion's leg as though the movement were a threat. The attendant froze mid-step. He reacts as if we are predators, they whispered, horrified. Well, Orion said, you did show up with a 12-person search party, dramatic robes, and enough emotional intensity to power the station's reactors. He shrugged. Maybe he's overwhelmed. None of them looked convinced. The amber-robed attendant spoke next, voice trembling with a mix of formality and heartbreak. Heir Solon was to participate in the Aegis bonding ritual today. Among our people, every royal child must choose a guardian, one they sense, one aligned to their spirit. The attendant's ears angled downward, a sign of grief. He has rejected every candidate. The silver-robed attendant added in a softer tone, he has not spoken since the death of his father 6 cycles ago. We believed the structure of the ritual might ground him. Instead, he ran. Solon's fingers tightened around Orion's hand, small, desperate, clinging to the only solid thing in a world spinning out of his control. Orion had no idea what to do. This was far beyond broken couplings and stubborn ventilation systems. He could fix machines that quit on him. But a grieving alien child? A sacred ritual? The expectations of an entire royal entourage? I'm not trying to interfere in your culture, Orion said. But maybe he just needed space. Quiet. Less spectacle. The amber-robed attendant straightened. There is no space for deviation in the Aegis ritual. The child must choose. Without a guardian, Solon's emotional and psychic development will fracture. He risks losing the ability to bond at all. And you think forcing him to pick someone is going to help? Orion asked gently. The attendants exchanged looks, dozens of unspoken fears flickering between them. Before anyone could respond, the corridor lights dimmed, then brightened again in a pulsating shift. A new presence approached, a presence so commanding the very air felt different. Her Majesty is arriving, Commander Vale whispered. Even she sounded nervous. More footsteps echoed, soft and steady. Orion sensed authority long before he saw her. Queen Amaris Solari entered the maintenance passage as though it were a ceremonial hall, her robes transitioning from midnight blue to radiant violet with each movement. Her posture was regal, but her expression, when she saw her child, was painfully human. Solon, she breathed. It wasn't a royal decree. It was a mother's plea. Solon pressed closer to Orion's side, trembling. The queen's eyes flicked briefly to Orion, sharp, assessing, but not hostile. She was evaluating him with the precision of a scientist and the vulnerability of a parent terrified of losing what little she had left. You are the technician, she said quietly. Orion Vale, he replied. I fix, mostly everything. Badly, if you ask anyone except me. Something, not amusement, but a faint glimmer of it, passed through her gaze. My son has not willingly touched anyone since his father's passing, the queen said. And yet, he holds your hand. The attendants bowed their heads. The security officers shifted awkwardly. Orion felt like someone had mistaken him for a critical component in a starship engine, one wrong move and the whole system might detonate. "I didn't do anything," he said helplessly. "He just showed up here. I talked. He didn't run." The queen approached slowly, gracefully, lowering herself to her knees in front of her child. The corridor fell silent. "Solon," she said in their melodic language. Her voice vibrated softly through the air, and the child's ears twitched in response. "If this is your choice, show me." Solon's free hand lifted tremblingly and drew small shapes in the air, quick, hesitant symbols that Orion didn't understand. But the queen did. She inhaled sharply, covering her mouth. "He says you are quiet," she translated in a shaky whisper. "Quiet in the way he needs. You do not push. You do not demand. You do not drown him." Tears welled in her eyes. "He says, you feel safe." Orion's chest tightened. The queen rose slowly, gaze turning solemn. "Among my people, a royal child's choice in the Aegis ritual is binding. Sacred. Unquestionable." She paused. "If he has chosen you, then by our law, you become his guardian." Orion nearly dropped Bram. What? I'm barely qualified to take care of myself." "You are exactly what he chose," the queen replied softly. "And choice is the foundation of the Aegis bond." Commander Vale muttered, "This is going in the all-time top 3 strangest incident reports." But the queen wasn't joking. She wasn't exaggerating. Her sincerity was so heavy it felt like gravity. "Guardian?" Orion echoed. "As in, protector? Teacher? Guide?" "Something like what you humans call a parent," she confirmed. "Only deeper. And irreversible." Solon looked up at him then, eyes full of hope and fear and longing for someone not to fix him, but simply not to leave. Orion felt his pulse stutter. He was utterly unmatched to this task. He was a maintenance worker with a stubborn streak, an overused toolkit, and more emotional dense than he cared to admit. But Solon had chosen him. A small, trembling hand in his. A bond forming in silence. An entire tradition shifting like stars realigning. And Orion, heart pounding, throat tight, knew his answer before it even formed. He just wasn't ready to say it aloud. Not yet. For a long moment, no one moved. The maintenance corridor felt too small for everything contained inside it, an entire monarchy's expectations, a fragile grieving child, and one human technician who wanted nothing more than to crawl back into his ventilation ducts and pretend none of this was happening. But Solon stood there, fingers curled around Orion's hand, and the weight of that small grip kept him from bolting. "Your Majesty," one of the attendants whispered, voice shaking with reverence and fear, "the Aegis ritual was meant to proceed hours ago. Without a guardian, the child's emotional resonance will." "I know," the queen murmured. She didn't take her eyes off Solon. "But we pushed too hard. We believed structure would save him. Instead, he ran from us, straight into the hands of someone who simply listened." Her gaze shifted to Orion, sharp and luminous and unbearably sad. "Perhaps we forgot that grief does not obey ceremony." Orion swallowed hard. He wasn't used to being looked at like that, like he was important. Valuable. Necessary. It made him deeply uncomfortable. "Look," he began carefully, rubbing the back of his neck with his free hand, "I'm not trained in Guardian ing. I'm just a maintenance worker who talks too much when stressed." "You talk gently," the queen said. And gently is something Solon has not been given in a very long time. The attendants exchanged glances, conflicted, guilty, hopeful. Commander Vale muttered under her breath, "I cannot believe this is happening in my station." Of all the corridors, it had to be the one with the flickering biolights. Orion ignored the commentary. His focus stayed on Solon, whose gaze was fixed on the queen with a kind of pleading vulnerability. The boy's long ears had shifted downward, a sign Orion now recognized as fear mixed with longing. The queen extended her hand, inviting but not demanding. Solon, do you choose him? Truly. Solon's breathing hitched. Then, slowly, he released Orion's hand just long enough to step forward, small, timid steps, as though each one was an act of bravery. He touched his fingers to the queen's palm, drawing a tiny shape against her skin before retreating back to Orion's side like a comet hooked to its orbit. The queen's breath trembled. He says, she translated softly, that you feel like quiet machinery. She blinked, surprised at her own words. A place where the world hums but never shouts. Orion let out a choked cough that might have been a laugh. Quiet machinery. Honestly, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever called me. The queen's voice thickened. It is high praise. He means you are steady. Predictable. Safe. Solon pressed against Orion's leg again, small hands bunching the fabric of his coveralls. A wave of emotion hit Orion harder than he expected. Someone was choosing him, truly choosing him, not out of obligation or necessity, but out of instinct. It had been years since anyone looked at him with that kind of trust. The silver-robed attendant stepped forward, bowing his head. Your Majesty, such a choice has no precedent. No human has ever been named guardian to an Archelian heir. The consequences, political, cultural, would be immediate. Then we will write new precedent, the queen replied without hesitation. If my son's healing requires it, then so be it. The attendants fell silent, stunned. Commander Vale cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but the station council is already buzzing about alarms and missing dignitaries. We'll need to report something. You will report the truth, the queen said. The heir has chosen. Her words were final. Immovable. The corridor shifted, the mood, the tension, the unspoken disbelief. Every attendant now stared at Orion as though he were a strange new star that had suddenly altered all their constellations. Orion felt his stomach lurch. Wait, hold on. Before we finalize anything, can I at least know what being a guardian actually means? Like, daily responsibilities? Risks? Is there a textbook? A pamphlet? An attendant spoke softly. The Aegis bond is emotional more than ceremonial. You become the anchor for the heir's inner world. Their stability. Their growth. Their safety. Another added, if the bond is strong, both guardian and child flourish. If neglected, the child withdraws. Permanently. Withdraws, how? Orion asked.